Welcome, everyone, to this afternoon's joint program between the Euclid Public Library and the East Cleveland Public Library. My name's Carla Bowman. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Euclid Public Library, and I have the pleasure to introduce our two speakers today. So we are honored to host Jonathan Abrams, who is an award-winning staff reporter for the New York Times. He's the best-selling author of 2 previous books, Boys Among Men and All the Pieces Matter. A graduate of the University of Southern California, Mr. Abrams was formerly a staff writer at Bleacher Report, Grantland, and the Los Angeles Times. Welcome, Mr. Abrams.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the library for having me.
Yes, so glad to have you. And then I'd also like to introduce Mr. Ray Ford. He is leading today's discussion. Mr. Ford's a former employee at the Euclid Public Library, is currently an English teacher at Euclid City Schools, and is serving as Vice President on the Board of Trustees for the Euclid Public Library. Mr. Ford's passionate about hip hop, and I know he's looking forward to today's conversation. So with Mr. Abrams' permission, we're recording this program. You can look for the recording on Euclid Library and East Cleveland Public Library's YouTube pages.
Jonathan, Mr. Abrams, it's a pleasure to meet you. And I just want to first of all, just thank you for writing this book and contributing to the knowledge that we already had on the culture. It was much needed, and I've never read. Well, I read one book sort of like this, but it only spanned like 10 years. So I just want to thank you for contributing to the knowledge base that we already have about the culture.
I appreciate it. I can't rap and I can't DJ, but I figured that this would be something that I could contribute to a culture that I love.
You never tried any of that?
I didn't say I didn't try. That's how I knew I was bad at both.
Really? Which one were you the worst at?
Oh man, probably trying to be a lyricist. I didn't try too hard, but I got bad feedback from friends. So
yeah, that kind of feedback gets back to you really fast. I mean, it's an instant feedback. When you can't rhyme, it's bad. I mean, it comes back quick. Trust me, I've been on that road too, and I kind of fell into the lap of DJing early. So that became my entrance into the culture. The vinyl and the records.
That's the foundation of it all.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll start just for the folks joining and that will watch us later. How did hip hop culture begin?
Yeah, so it began in the 1970s with a bunch of neglected and impoverished kids in the Bronx. And these are basically latchkey kids who didn't have a lot to do. This was a time when the Bronx was burning, fires were everywhere. It was when the president told the city basically to drop dead. And so these kids basically had no outlet, nothing to do. And the older kids, they went down to the discos in downtown New York. Like I said, these kids were basically left alone their own devices. And what happened was that one of the DJs who had just gotten from Jamaica, a DJ named Kool Herc, he found a way to do a merry-go-round system with his 2 turntables. And by doing that, he extended the break, which is the extended drum patterns of the songs. And that's when the kids love to get down and dance and be able to do that as long as they can. They form circles, and that's how the B-boys and B-girls develop. And from that sprang a whole culture, a whole movement where you got the 4 elements of hip hop. You got the break dancing, which is about to become an Olympic sport in Paris this summer. Then you have lyricism, you have graffiti, and you have DJing.
I'm going to just jump on that because I just recently found out that the breaking is going to be in the Olympics, and I wasn't surprised because I knew that the international spread of the art form, but I'm interested to see how they score it. I don't know how do we determine gold, silver, and bronze medal. So that's an aside. I'm sorry, I just you mentioning that.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
Oh man, but. So we'll talk about first the structure of the book and how you came up with that. So I guess we'll start with what made you want to write this particular book?
So I knew that we were coming up on the 50-year anniversary soon enough. And to me,
Mhm.
a lot of the seeds for how this incredible genre was birthed, it hadn't really been discovered or really excavated with a lot of detail. It's been reported here and there, but I didn't see any book that went into the detail that I craved, that I wanted. And so the other component of it is that it's not like, I don't know, like jazz or blues or some other musical genre where you can't talk to the architects and the creators of it. A lot of hip hop's architects and
Right.
creators are still amongst us, and a lot of them didn't get the
Mhm.
due that they should have received for helping birth this thing. So I think it was a
Mhm.
combination of those two factors.
And that's a very interesting point. A lot of our godfathers and originators of the culture, like you said, they're still here, which leads me to my next question, and that is, how did you come up with the interview process? Like, I know you're a journalist, and so it kind of reads into that. But there's narrative, which is cool. It's just the story that we all know. But then the narrative to me is what really, I mean, the interviews is what really made the book different. I've read a lot of hip hop books about hip hop, but none like this before. So what made you structure it like that?
Yeah, so it's a oral history structure. So basically we have these pioneers and bricklayers and architects telling the story of creating and advancing hip hop in their own words. And that uh, propels the story forward. It's not a strictly narrative story. And I always like oral history formats because I think if they're done right, they almost feel like a written documentary. And I wanted the way I wanted it to feel was that these pioneers were sitting at a table, sitting at this whole
Yes.
big table and telling stories, passing it back and forth and holding this giant conversation on hip hop.
How did you get in touch with all of these folks? I mean, I can't think of anybody that you almost didn't talk to. Well, um, cool. Hurt. Did you get a chance to speak? I don't remember seeing Hurt in
He was
there.
one that I didn't that I
Hmm.
didn't there were some, and there were some whose stories have already been told a lot and already out there. So I was more happy to get somebody whose story hadn't been covered as much. It was almost like excavating a diamond. So somebody like uh Duke Booty, who
Yes.
he helped co-write The Message, which is a foundational hip hop song. And he actually passed away shortly before the book
Hmm.
published. So I was so happy to be able to get his words and his message into this book. But it was basically a lot of emails, a lot of calling, a lot of bugging people,
Hmm.
um, a lot of just saying, "Hey, I got this person, I got this person, I got
Hmm.
Killer Mike and Bun B and Just Blaze to talk. Will Ice T talk?" It
Yeah.
was a lot of emails along those lines, and some people understood and got the vision for it, and some people
Hmm.
didn't. And I can't blame the people who didn't because a book sounds so far off. But I was really happy with the final product and how it came together at the end.
No, no, I agree 100%. I've only read one other book about the culture like this. I mean, it's called Yes, Yes, Y'all, and it is an oral history, but it only spans 10 years, from birth, to the 10 years, following.
Yeah, I read that.
There's
That's a good one
Yeah, it is, but
by
like I said, it kind of,
Jim Frick, I think,
yep,
and
yep,
Charlie Ahern. Yeah.
yep, yep. And so it spans those 10 years, and it has, all of the literature in there. It has, some oral histories in there, but it stops. This one, it kind of keeps going, and the way the sequence of it, it did feel like I was watching a documentary. So of the which of the folks that you spoke to, which was kind of like your favorite interview, if you can choose a favorite? I know that's kind of hard.
One when you ask that, one that immediately jumps out is Cool Mo D, and
Okay.
Cool Mo D is such a pivotal figure in hip hop
Yes,
because
absolutely.
he was there at the beginning with the Treacherous Three, and then he was there
Mm-hmm.
as hip hop starting to come of age. He was battling LL Cool J. He was there at the
Mm-hmm.
Grammys when a lot of artists who had gotten the first hip hop Grammy decided to boycott it. So talking to him, there's a couple times in life where I feel like it's almost not an interview. Like I'm just being delivered like these seeds of knowledge,
Yes.
and I'm not even
Mm-hmm.
taking it for a book. I'm taking it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And talking with Cool Mo D was definitely one of those times where, he was talking about hip hop as it went up in the late 80s, as it was almost NWA pitted against Public Enemy. And
Yeah.
what hip hop version became more popular after that was the gangster rap. And he had a lot of thoughts on why that was more popular coming out of the late
Mm-hmm.
80s and then the early 90s. And
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about how like Rapper's Delight, when that came out, you put 1 cent, corporate America puts 1 cent into anything and it changes how it is forever. And that's when hip hop truly started to change and branch off from the different four fundamental elements, because people found that they could profit and commercialize hip hop, and hip hop forever changed. So he was just dynamic in talking to him.
Yeah. I remember, I mean, I'll go into a little bit my experience with the culture. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't quite remember, you know, my first encounter with it. It just always felt like it was there, and I'm the younger side of, the first generation, you know, the culture. I mean, I'm like the baby of the first generation. But in saying that, um, how many people did you actually talk to?
About 300 for the book.
And did you use all like 300 people in the book?
Pretty close. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I tried to use as much as I could. It's funny, the book is heavy, but the
Yeah.
original manuscript I sent in was probably 3 times as large as what
Mm-hmm.
the final thing came out to be. Because
Mm-hmm.
hip hop is such a sprawling story where so many people impacted it and propelled and pushed
Mm-hmm.
it forward. You could just publish a book just listing everybody's names who contributed to hip hop, and that would be a whole big book. So
Yeah.
I knew that not one book could capture all of hip hop and its impact and its evolution, but I figured I
Yeah.
would give it a good shot.
Yeah. No, and it reads, and that was my follow-up question to that was, yeah, you talked about the different influences, all the people that kind of affected, the culture, and it's regional, so you kind of you start in the Bronx, and then all of a sudden you're doing this, and you're doing this, and you're doing this, and you're doing this. And so we end up, and that's when the book really takes off. A lot of times I would listen to parts of it and I would be in my car and I listened to it and I'm like, wait a minute. So now I felt like as I was driving, I'm driving through these different regions that you're speaking about.
I love that.
Um, oh, it was amazing. And the different voices, if you listen to the audio, I mean the different voices that, help with the interviews and speak, to these oral histories, it's just amazing because every voice is kind of different. Um, so I guess we have to start in terms of branching out and how you wrote it and how the book just kind of spreads out across the country. We start in the Bronx and then we kind of branch out and we move into, I mean, we kind of go south. No, we go west.
It goes west,
We
yeah.
incrementally go west. So what was that like, going west?
I love that you use the word branching out, because that's almost how I view hip hop. That's this big giant tree where you have the roots and it's starting to sprout in New York, and then as it evolves and gets older and gains influence, the branches start
Mm-hmm.
spreading out elsewhere. So that's how I view the book. Like I
Mm-hmm.
started it in New York and it stays in New York as it's starting to percolate and develop, and Rapper's
Mm-hmm.
Delight and the message comes out, and it stayed in New York for a good
Yeah, it did.
almost decade, where you get
Mm-hmm.
Run DMC is even coming out before it really gets big in the West. But then
Yep.
what comes big out in the West, it's not the NWA music that launches and propels hip hop music out there. It's the electro hip hop scene, where
Yep.
kind of the Africa Bambaataa branch of hip hop, where you have Arabian Prince and even
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Dre wearing the sequin
Yep.
outfits, and
Yep.
they
Yep.
and
Uh-huh.
and they were doing all the electro stuff. And from there, hip hop kind of gangster rap kind of starts in Philadelphia with Schoolie D, so it goes out another
Mm-hmm.
branch. And then back in LA, Ice-T kind of co-ops what Schoolie D is doing, and then that
Mm-hmm.
is influencing NWA, and it starts. So it's just the building blocks of hip hop, especially in
Mhm.
its early days. You can almost plot them on top of each other and see, okay, there's a direct line from NWA to Ice-T to Schoolie D, and
Mhm.
I love how one influences the other.
Oh, excellent. So now that so we if we're west, that's excellent. Thank you for mentioning that. So we're west. So I want to stay west for a minute. And I mean, and Schoolie D is mentioned and referenced, I don't know how many times. I mean, he's kind of like that bedrock of, I don't care. This is my expression. I'm not gonna bite my tongue. Nobody else has ever been asked to bite their tongue. Why should I be asked to bite my tongue? Um, and if anybody's listening, I mean, the song, the PSK, I mean, if you really want to get to know the culture, you need to venture into that song. You need to really meet that song. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. It's a springboard for a lot of for hip hop taking a turn and for a lot of what came next. PSK, what does it mean?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you this, and then I want to tell you what mine is. Your favorite, I guess, story that you heard from all of the interviews you did. Can you pick a favorite?
Oh my
I mean, I
gosh.
don't want to put you, I don't want to press you, but so we'll okay, let's just give me, it's hard because I have more than one, but your favorite, I know my two, but yours, do you have a top, we'll even go top five. I'll give you top five stories that you heard and you felt like, wait, I didn't know that. I
I
didn't
mean,
know that.
there was a lot of I didn't know that moments throughout it, and selfishly, that was another reason why I wanted to report and write this book out was to be able to, go deeper into a culture
Yeah,
that I
discovery.
love. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there were moments like Ice Cube working with the Bomb Squad and Public Enemy.
That's my number. That's my number one. Okay, keep going. That's my number one. That's my number one. When Ice Cube goes to start working with the Bomb Squad, that is my number one story. All right, so we go west and we hit the Bomb Squad. And when I'll tell my age. I was a freshman in eighth grade and freshman in high school when America's Most Wanted comes out. And it sounded so different than NWA. And I was like, wait, what is this sound? What is this? What is this? So then you write about it and you get like firsthand accounts of making in this relationship. Please tell us what that was like.
That was I wish I could put into words how rare that was at that moment in hip hop. The East and West, it was just almost divided, not divided nations because of any animosity. I mean, literally, like people just didn't know each other at that
Right.
point. So
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
weren't collaborating. A West Coast artist wasn't gonna collaborate with the East Coast producing team. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, that was when NWA was fracturing, when Ice Cube was getting out of Dr. Dre. There was a lot of pressure on Ice Cube to deliver because he was one of the main writers for NWA, and now he was branching out on his own. And another one of the cool things that I don't know if I had realized or appreciated how much was how much NWA actually enjoyed the Bomb Squad and enjoyed Chuck D and what Public Enemy was doing out
Mm-hmm.
in Strong Island at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So Ice Cube basically flies out to New York and meets up with the Bomb Squad, and they get to work. They It's just a meeting of the minds where both sides are focused on delivering the best product that they can, and they come up with, like you said, America's Most Wanted, a masterpiece.
Yes. Yes. And I think reading this, where you talked about the difference in the music making process between the Bomb Squad and Dr. Dre and Yella, when their creative process was, I mean, I always considered it's like controlled chaos. It's the most beautiful sound of chaos you've ever heard. Because they layered and stacked all of these different samples on top of each other. Um, and how he was kind of like they kind of just sat him to his own devices, like, okay, find some music and then
Mhm.
we'll put it together later. I mean, that to me, to hear that, I mean, I knew that they kind of worked in an assembly line sort of, you know, ordeal or process, but to hear him actually say it, to hear, was it Sir Jinx, I think, was in there speaking. I'm like, man, you couldn't have wrote a more complete, tale, so to speak,
I
for
appreciate
fans,
that.
for
I, I
for fans like me.
it's it's the eras of hip hop that I love, and I'm sure that you came from. It's difficult for people to imagine what it took to extrapolate all the sounds and the drums and the music that somebody like Bomb Squad did, where it took 5, 6 people, and it didn't take a day. They
Right.
weren't just hitting keys on a computer and finding those sounds. They were
Right.
digging through digging through crates. That's where that
Hmm.
name comes from, and finding those records, even if it's just a snippet to sample from.
Hmm. So, all right. So, are now? So we're out west, and now I want to fly us back to Queens for a second, and I want to go in the second part of the book that you write, and it's the native tongues. When you get to native tongues, and we get this, this meeting of these beautiful minds, Queen Latifah, Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers, all of these, minds that sort of step outside of the boundaries of not only music making, but thoughts and ideas in their music. What was it like speaking to them in that process?
Yeah, that was an era of hip hop where you're just getting all different kinds of hip hop, where you're getting the NWA sound, and you're getting just different flavors, and that's De La Soul and Black Sheep, Queen
Yeah, yeah.
Latifah, Chia Lee, uh, Q-Tip, Fife Dog, and it's a different branch of hip hop, and it's more taking it
Hmm.
more jazz influence, and it's also more conscious and more, you know, not taking yourself as seriously like De La Soul did in a lot of their songs. So it's almost like they're showing that hip hop is for everybody. It's not
Hmm.
for the didactic crowd that some people may get
Hmm.
from Public Enemy, or it's not
Hmm.
for the rebellious side that you get from NWA, but it's almost an Afrocentric, we can be proud of ourselves type of flavor that they're coming with. And for that moment in time, it's really popular and really fresh and really new.
Amazing. I mean, I like I said, I keep, I'm in awe of I guess the first person accounts of all of these, I guess, journeys of a lot of these folks. That's the part that got me the most, and I think that's what's so impressive about the book to me is that, yes, you have your narrative in there, but then you take that narrative and then you almost kind of use as evidence, these first person accounts of what actually happened when it happened.
Uh,
You can't.
I appreciate that. One thing I want to mention too is that, like, we mentioned Queen Latifah, and everybody talks about the golden age of hip hop, where
Yes.
you have KRS-One and Rakim and Big
Hmm.
Daddy Kane, and hip hop is just going leaps and bounds ahead. I just wanted to point out that at that point in time, you also had women just really advancing hip hop, where you had Queen Latifah and MC Light coming off the heels of what Roxanne Shante was doing, and Salt and Pepper. It was just a real dynamic time, that late '80s period for hip hop.
Yeah. I mean, MC Light. I mean, we can't say enough about her. Like, I remember when Eyes on This came out. I think that was 80, late 88, 89. Eyes on This comes out, and for those of you that don't know what cassette tapes are, um, I had the cassette tape. I didn't have vinyl, that vinyl just yet. I'm a huge record collector, you see behind me, but the cassette tape came on, and mine popped. I played it so much. Eyes on This, like it popped. And then I had to run down to my friend's house and dub a tape of it. But yes, Queen
Yeah,
Latifah. I mean, all
you
of those
remember
folks.
trying to dub the cassettes and all that, man. Ooh, that was back in the day.
I got a few years on me. All right, so if you wouldn't mind, if you don't just like I said, I'm kind of just in my bag right now about the book. Can we fly south? An interesting story about when you start to get into the formation of Two Live Crew and their influence on the culture and how they pushed it into a different region. Um, I grew up in the military, and
Hmm.
so my experience of being given the cultures is quite different. But my first actual experience as a kid was with Two Live crew when I was living on Air Force bases in
Oh,
Florida.
okay, so you didn't tiptoe in, you jumped right right in.
Smacked right in the face. All kinds of trouble with language and lyrics and adult themes. I mean, it was all there, and I couldn't have been any more than 10. And I was collecting vinyl at that point. I actually have those early Two Live Crew vinyl records, like the
Oh,
ones with
nice.
the Luke Skywalker imprint. I still have them. So that shows you how I shouldn't have been listening to it at 10 years
Yeah,
old.
before he had to drop the Skywalker part.
Yeah, before he got sued. Yeah. So what was it like going, I guess south? It's like taking this long plane ride. So you go from, the Bronx and you end up out west and then you fly down and you go south, into Florida, but you make a stop with Brother Marquise in California. So what was it like putting that puzzle together?
Yeah, so I think the army base is this. I'll answer the question in a second, but mentioning the army base is really interesting because army bases played a unique uh, role in hip hop, where a lot of the music spread that way was different people coming from different parts of the country to specific army bases and being able to exchange those cassette tapes and listen to new music and share and experience that for the first time. So that's really, I feel like that's a unique component and facet of hip hop. The South, their hip hop, I feel like it's almost separated by one specific moment. So you have the
Mm-hmm.
Two Live Crew, and they're operating in Florida. The Two Live Crew, it first came together in Southern California at an Air Force base. In Luke Skywalker, Uncle Luke, he sees that this crew is popular whenever he plays this song in Miami. And these people in California basically have no clue. And he
Mm-hmm.
says that he'll fly them out to Miami for them to perform, and they realize how popular they are. And so gradually and gradually and gradually, their music becomes more raunchy because it's that booty shaking, loud bass music that it's hot and sweaty in Miami. It's humid, everything gets going. It's more about that bass than any type of lyrics. So that's one part. And hip hop is starting to percolate a little bit, in Atlanta, in New Orleans and Memphis and in other places in the South. But the one big bisecting moment with hip hop in the South is at the 95 Source Awards when Andre 3000 says that the South got something to say. And that's when almost the South just takes a stranglehold on hip hop soon after that.
And wouldn't let it and wouldn't and probably just recently kind of loosened, not even let it go, just kind of loosened it up because I mean that's a gumbo mixture that southern I mean that's a gumbo mixture down there with the different varieties of music that you get. I mean because there's an interregional aspect to the South that just can't be
Yeah.
compared anywhere. So this is so now I want to ask you, how long did it take you to do this? Like this book, how long did it take you to write?
Oh gosh. Probably about 3.5 years or so. A lot of it was trying to edit it and formulate it down to this big, massive words of what I had and what I wanted to uh, put forth, and making it into more of a readable and digestible tone.
Mm-hmm. And is there anybody that you didn't get to talk to that you really looking back on it, even though I mean the way it came together is amazing. But anybody that you wish you could have fit in there that you didn't get a chance to fit in there or get a chance to talk to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a fan of some people who, like, like somebody like Nas or Jay-Z. Yeah, it would have been really
Mm-hmm.
fun to talk to, but their stories are,
Speak.
like I said earlier, they're out there. So being able to talk to somebody like Ice Cube or Just Blaze or Bun B, like people who I grew up on their music and appreciated their impact, that was
Mm-hmm.
really enlightening and entertaining for me.
Mm-hmm. Um, do you have a particular favorite region where music comes out of?
I mean, I grew up in Southern California in
Right.
the 90s. So I
Okay.
I came to age with Tupac and Snoop and that whole Death Row
Hmm.
conglomerate back when Suge Knight was running the streets.
Hmm.
Uh, I love, and beyond that, I love that G Funk, that Dr. Dre
Yeah,
and DJ Quick and Warren G type of music. That to me
quick,
screams LA.
quick. Yeah, that's another genius. I mean, DJ Quick. Ooh, you can write a whole book on him. Just by himself. And I believe you opened the book with kind of like a story about Pac, Tupac. Um, and I mean, you didn't get too deep into it, but you did, mention him first. So, and there's a question here is like, what? And this is a question that anybody is probably asked. So it's kind of tiered, tiered in two different ways. Like, do you have a favorite Tupac song? If you can have a favorite song, I mean, and it's hard for me when you have a favorite artist to have a favorite song. Do you have one?
Yeah, I think, and I'm trying to decide on the moment, but if I had to pick one, I think Changes would
Oh
probably be the
wow.
one, just
Hmm.
because I think he was so ahead of his time as far as what he was talking about, and the reason
Hmm.
why we're still talking about Tupac today is because a lot of the stuff that he talked about was back then in the early to mid 90s is still relevant and prevalent today. So when he's
Hmm.
talking about like the world ain't ready to see a black president, at a time for
Hmm.
and learn to see me as a brother instead of distant strangers, stuff along those lines is it's really almost being a philosopher and being able to see things that haven't even happened yet.
Yeah, he was very prophetic, in that way, and unabashed in his. I mean, and it grew. I remember. I was old enough. I was a young teenager. Digital Underground, and kind of this sparse, appearance of him,
Yeah, he
and
was
all
dancing.
around and same, yeah, and same song. He's like, he's part of the crew. And now he's on the same song. It's like, man, who is this guy? And then, Apocalypse Now comes out, and you're like, wait, that's different, you know, and then um he just grows. I mean, and then he grows and grows. It's like you can't get rid of him. You don't want to, but it's like, man, he's infectious almost in a good way. Um, do you remember where you were when he passed?
Yeah, I think that's one of those like man on the moon moments for
Mm-hmm.
for people of our age. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who told me I was in I think eighth grade at the time, and yeah, a neighborhood friend told me, and I was one of those kids who for weeks and probably years afterwards was hoping that he was alive somewhere in Jamaica, still
Oh
doing
yeah,
new
I
music.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember.
because for the longest time I have no idea how he recorded so much before he passed, because he didn't live all that long, but to just have that type of
Hmm.
catalog for stuff he recorded is just amazing. So yeah, I was following those conspiracy theories probably before they were even out, hoping he was still around.
Yeah, he was a studio. I mean, and this is colloquial phrase, but he was a studio rat. He would he would make songs like five, six, seven, eight, nine songs in one night. He was a machine, when it came to that. You
And
know,
most people when they do that, it sounds like they made seven, eight, nine songs in one night. you know, for him it didn't.
like they were tired when they made that one.
Yeah.
Like they just picked that one up. No, absolutely. His writing stamina, and it was amazing. Because some of the stuff we even hear now, he made. Who knows when he made it? And that's the beauty of it to me. It's like you don't know when he actually made those songs. Well, all eyes on me. He was just in massive creativity mode. Um, and one more, because I always ask this if I can, about Pac. Favorite album. And this always, my eyebrows go up when I, hear people's answers about this, favorite Tupac album.
I'm gonna go with Me Against the World. Um,
Okay, we don't have to do anything else. We're on the same page here. We're on the same page here. Okay, let me just follow that up with, I'm an English teacher, so why? Why?
I think it was his thesis. It showed
Hmm.
every type of version of Pac that you could find.
Hmm.
Showed the kind of angry, virile Tupac
Hmm.
Shakur. Showed the deep, poetic, um, sensitive Tupac Shakur. It
Hmm.
showed a lot of different aspects. And at that point in my life, you weren't seeing that many different types of African Americans portrayed in media having a wide breadth of personality, skills, or traits. Mostly
Hmm.
on TVs or movies, it would be either the black criminal or it would be the upstanding black citizen who could
Yep.
almost do no
Hmm.
wrong, like the
Hmm.
Uncle Phil type character on TV. So this was a definite different version showing the full
Hmm.
360 spectrum of being black.
Right. Yeah. And people always ask me, and they always frown when they hear me say that Me Against the World is my favorite record of his. And because All Eyes on Me always takes, because I guess it's the most recent, current, and they still play all the, songs from that record. Um, but for me, like you said, I always describe it as it's the one place where he's not extreme in any one way. If you listen to Apocalypse Now, he's extreme. His views, his opinions are extreme. Strictly, I mean, you don't get any more extreme than that one. And then when Me Against the World, he just kind of balances out. And it's like like you said, there's every like part of him on that record. So yep. So I thought I was gonna have to dig a little deeper with that. But no, we're on the same page. We're on the same page there. So so respect for that. Um, let's go back to the book, the cover. How did you come up with the cover?
With the cover,
Yep. How'd the cover come to be?
so I thought the cover, we got a couple different examples and ideas, and I just ended up loving this one because with the pastel colors, it looked like almost an
Hmm.
old school flyer. It was written
Yes.
up for a party, one of those
Yeah.
hip hop
Looks like
parties in
one
the
of
in the
Herc's
70s.
flyers. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like one of Herc's flyers. Excellent. And then the title,
Yeah, so
like,
I mean, for me, like I think I bounced around with having the title be Book of Rhymes for a little bit of while, and then
hmm.
that fell short for the totality of hip hop in the end
Hmm.
because hip hop is obviously more than just rhyming. And so to me, you talk about how this thing was birthed. The first question we talked about it being birthed amongst decay and ruin and hopelessness in the
Hmm.
Bronx to go on to influence almost every strand of America and then the
Hmm.
world where it influences so much. To me, it's the biggest come up story of all. And,
Yes.
you know, making something out of nothing into something that permeates every strand of society. So
Hmm.
that's why I ended up with that title.
And yeah, it's the cover. I mean, it catches your eye. I mean, when I first saw it, I mean, and I tell when I'm in class, and whenever I'm in class, I always let students know what I'm reading at the time. So they come in and they see this on the board, and it's like flashed up there, and they see the cover, and they're like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "This is the book I'm reading right now." And I'm teaching eighth grade advanced English at this right now. So they see the book, and it's like just a digital image of the cover. So they see it and like, man, I want to read that. I want to read that. And then I give them the story. I'm like, okay, here it is. And they're like, wait, how many pages is that? And I'm like, it's just a couple. It's just a couple pages, just
Hey,
one or two
tell them it
pages.
could have been a lot longer.
Yeah, it's
It
just
was
one or two pages. But I did, and I did at one point. We had some free time in class, and so I played some of the audio for them. And I showed them, the structure of it and how it's laid out. And a lot of times, with students that are more reluctant to read, if you show them that it's not overwhelming and it's not just a page just full of like 5-point font words, it kind of loosens them up and they're less intimidated. And when they saw the pages and how they were written and how you had different fonts, you had the narrative in bold and then you had the interviews kind of in a smaller font. um, they were more apt to read it. You know, they were more apt to jump into it and learn. So I do want, again, I want to thank you for this. I'm gonna actually be using, you know, some of it. I haven't quite figured out how yet, but next year, when we do come back for in the fall, I'll have, you know, lessons written on it, you know, in the
I
beginning of in the beginning of the year.
I love that, and I appreciate that so much. I think that was secretly one of my goals, was that this book could eventually be an educational tool in classrooms to help introduce people to hip hop, and especially kids, because hip hop is something that dominates kids' lives, and how many kids
Hmm.
really know where it originated
They
from,
don't.
how it
They don't.
originated.
They truly don't. I mean, from their, you know, the way they speak, um, how they dress, you know, sneakers is like, I'm like, your sneakers, you didn't come up with any of that. You know, I didn't come up with it. You didn't come up with it. You know, that was that was given to us. Um, so at this point, where are we at on time? We're almost to the questions section. But all right, so you began, how did you know, when you were writing this, did you have an end point? Like I know you knew where to start. Did you know where you wanted to end when or did you just kind of evolve into, okay, this is a good place to stop now?
Yeah, I really didn't, and for a while that threw me off a little bit, because this hip hop is so open ended that the book really
Yeah.
never could end, because obviously hip hop never ends. There is no ending spot with the genre.
Hmm.
So as I was coming up with it, and as I was looking at different pivotal moments, I just thought that Kendrick Lamar winning a Pulitzer Prize just
Yes.
showed this giant leap in hip hop, where at one point it wasn't even considered for the Grammys and they had to boycott the Grammys, to now the art form is being recognized on this type of scale. And I just thought
Hmm.
that's it. Like, this is just the moment that shows how widely accepted and how immersed it is in everyday culture, where you have this type of esteemed critics and jury uh,
Hmm.
giving this amazing award, and it's deserved. Where, but
Absolutely.
the point that I wanted to make also was that Public Enemy deserved something like
Hmm.
that in their day, and it just
Hmm.
shows that hip hop evolved and changed, but also so did the acceptance of it.
Yeah. So, um, and that's, I mean, that's very eloquently put. How hard was it to get them to? Oh wait, we have a question in there. I don't know if you can you see it?
Yeah,
It says,
the reception that hip hop had into the music industry. At first, it was initially considered to be a novelty, and especially with artists back then. So I'll just take it by the example of Rapper's Delight and how that came about.
mm-hmm,
There were people who had been practicing hip hop and performing it at parties and battling people already in New York, who were, I guess you can call them almost like street legends at that time. And by the time Sylvia Robinson, who makes Sugar Hill Records, she comes up with the idea of transporting this onto vinyl. She approaches a lot of the people who have been practicing and doing hip hop, and they basically say, "No, that doesn't make sense. What this
isn't that
thing can't
funny?
be? Yeah, this thing can't be packaged and go on the radio or go on vinyl." And they say no. So she basically just engineers and constructs this group to make
Hmm.
Rappers Delight, people who aren't even really considered rappers at that time.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is just taken and extrapolated from rhymes that the Sugar Hill crew had heard on from different rappers that they had heard performing. I mean, at one point, Big Bang Cake even spells out Casanova's name, Grandmaster Caz. And so that's where it was at the beginning. So I say all that to say that in the beginning, nobody really realized the magnitude of this thing. And it stayed that way even after Rapper's Delight, which is this, the 15-minute version is catching fire across the country, and it's a whole 15-minute version of the song that people are listening to it all. It didn't really catch fire until that mid 80s period, when you have Def Jam and Rick Rubin come out and
Hmm.
and and Russell Simmons at that time, and they really push hip hop onto the mainstream and make it the industry that it ultimately would become today.
Hmm. Oh, all right. So we have another question. It says, and it's kind of piggybacks on something that I may have asked earlier, but it says, when you're researching a book like this, how do you know you have enough, or are you done?
Yeah, so it's a tough question because hip hop is so open-ended, and as a reporter, as a journalist, I'm never gonna say no to one more interview. I
Hmm.
think I had asked for one extension already from my publisher,
Hmm.
and
Right.
then instead of asking for another one, so my other books I'd actually turn in early. This is the first one that I asked for an extension on just because it was so complex and I wanted to get it right. So once it
Hmm.
had started to weigh in on that long, and was on the verge of asking for a second extension, I said, this is as complete as I'm going to be able to do.
Hmm. So you took the Q-tip approach, very meticulous, and he had to rip albums out of his hands. It was bad, but the product you can't argue it. I mean, yours or his. Um, so, all right, and Rapper's Delight. That's I mean, you spoke about Rapper's Delight and Sylvia Robinson and its impact, and do you feel, I mean, and we all know already, but we'd like to hear from you. Like, is that what opened the door, you think?
Yeah,
Um,
that not just opened the door, it opened a just huge wave for hip hop to come through and become
mhm,
popular, and because it was played on radios everywhere. And for a lot of people, it was the introduction to hip hop for them because they weren't in New York going to these parties and going to these park jams. They didn't
mhm,
know what hip hop was at that point, and almost there's they almost lay it out, the Sugar Hill Gang in the songs. They tell you what hip hop is basically.
mhm,
So it was immensely popular, and not just in New York, but nationwide. But what it did, it almost created this split in hip hop where you had these people who were already practicing hip hop for years earlier and were already more advanced than what was going on with Rappers Delight and Sugar Hill Gang, and they weren't able to really catch the tailwind of what they were doing, and they were almost a little upset that they felt like they had to almost go back and retrain themselves to do this more elementary version of hip hop where they thought that they had surpassed where they were already. But since this is the masses introduction to hip hop, this is
mhm.
how they need to do it and able to become popular.
Yeah, and it's funny because you do write about that in here where you said once Rappers Delight came out, a lot of the pioneers that had already, started to get more sophisticated in their writing and in their ideas, they were like, oh, wait, now we have to go back now? Like, we have to start over? I mean, like, because Rapper's Delight doesn't even have a structure to it, really.
Yeah.
They just kind of, it's really, there's no song structure to it. So, I don't know if personally I've listened to it enough times. I know the long version and the short version, but there's no structure to it. But
And the Keith Murray version, and I mean,
oh yeah, I forgot about that when the Def Squad
yeah,
did it.
yeah, the Eric
Um,
Sermon. But that it
yeah,
goes back
so
to what Kool Moe Dee was talking about, where corporate America puts 1 cent into anything, it changes forever. And once Rapper's Delight started becoming popular, and you see Def Jam a few years after that, you see a fracturing with the other elemental
sure, sure.
foundational elements of hip hop, where lyricism becomes way more popular than
Hmm.
graffiti or DJing
Hmm.
or a lot of the other stuff that was, because before when it originated, it was presented almost as this multifaceted gem where all these elements combine to make hip hop. And
Hmm.
as it became more popular, it just became very different.
Oh, interesting. So we have two questions. We'll start, and this one let's do this one first. And it refers back to Rapid Delight. After what you just said is like, would you consider, or in general, do you consider rap hop? Is it true hip hop?
Yeah, I think it's true hip hop, especially at that
Yeah.
time. And they're
Hmm.
still, coming out with what hip hop is, especially introducing it to the
Hmm.
masses. So yeah, it's hip hop. A lot of it was
Yeah.
was built off of what other people had already done,
Oh.
but they were
Hmm.
able to push it and package it and deliver it to the mainstream first. Um, and it's also a little bit different because it uses the bass line from Chick throughout it as well. So the music is different than what hip hop had been coming up to that, and hip hop obviously changes a little bit more after that when it gets more into sampling and away
Hmm.
from the live music and the live house bands. But it's definitely hip hop.
Yeah. I tend to agree with it. Agree with that too. Another question, and it well, it's almost two faceted. Oh, so the question is, where does Run DMC and Aerosmith's Walk This Way, the song, where does it fall into pushing, rap and the culture into mainstream,
Yeah,
in your opinion, as you like?
yeah. I saw that the breaking of the wall was mentioned in the question, and it
Yeah,
literally broke down a wall where there was no
like
one.
literally in the video.
Yeah, there was no
Yeah.
one group more pivotal in bringing
Hmm.
hip hop to the mainstream than Run DMC, where if you remember they had Rockbox and other songs where they showed that they could rock with just about anybody as well. And
Hmm.
they're obviously pivotal in bringing, commercialization into hip hop with Adidas
Hmm.
shoes and a way of looking new and fresh and hip. So when you put Aerosmith and Run DMC together, I mean, that was
Hmm.
almost a irresistible uh, concept. And it's at the time when MTV is starting to become popular as well. So that's another component where, back in the day when music videos actually matter and people
Right.
would it would be appointment TV
Yeah.
for a lot of people. So it caught
Hmm.
new eyeballs that way as well.
Yeah. So, and I that's a great question because it helps actually segue into the visual representation of the culture and moving into Yo MTV Raps, Rap City. And what do you think that did to help? I remember it, I remember how it affected me as just a kid and preteen, seeing these videos for the first time, actually being able to put faces with names and sounds. In terms of the culture, how do you think that helped break that wall as well?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that you just said was putting names to faces. Because even if you're lucky enough to be able to have a new cassette and have a new album, you're not seeing what these people look like. They may look like you may be able to relate to them even more. So once Yo MTV Raps started in the mid 80s, and you had it wasn't just Fab Five Freddy in a studio. He would actually go out and visit NWA or go out to different places and see them in their different locales and how they live. So it was opening up a brand new window for a lot of people. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that for some people it may be hard to imagine an era with no cell phone cameras and no like
Right, right,
ubiquitous
right,
camera
right.
everywhere, but this was a
Mm-hmm.
day and age where the mainstream media wasn't really covering hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it was still left to the imagination until something like Yo MTV Raps open eyeballs, literally open eyes to what was going on.
Yeah, I know, for me and the young people and people that I grew up around, like I said, I grew up partially a lot of my childhood on a military base, Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force when I was growing up. So um, we that was our like gateway into the culture to see how folks dressed, see how they walked, how they talked, how they interacted with one another. It was through the videos and on TV raps, that kind of like brought it full circle, for us, living, behind that fence, so to speak, because
Hmm.
that's kind of how you live when you're in the military. Um, so we had about, I think we got about 4 minutes left. Um, are you working on anything else? And like, do you have any plans is there anything left that you think that you would like to discover for yourself in this particular genre of
Yeah, I mean, I
writing.
think that there's always stuff to discover in hip hop. Another firm book on hip hop. I don't have that plan yet. I wanted to take a deep exhale after this book and be able to chill for a little while, but I'm getting that
Sure,
itch again
sure.
to find that next idea.
Mm-hmm. All right. Um, and one thing it just came popped into my head. We have 3 minutes left, and maybe we can just leave it here, and we can sign off. But um, I didn't get a chance to talk to you and ask you about when you started to really talk about or write about JD and Slum Village, you know, and his like influence on not just rap music, but music in general, especially when we talk about neo soul. You mentioned that in the
Hmm.
story. I mean, in your book. Um, for those folks that don't know who JD is, like I said, we got about 3 minutes, and I hate to rush you with this, but I think it's very important that we mention him before we go.
Yeah, yeah. Just hearing his name, I'm gonna play some of his tracks after this because it's been a while, and his music always gets you in a good mood because it was so eclectic, and it still is. So Dilla is a producer out of Detroit who he came up by meeting Q-Tip, and he did a lot of I mean, he didn't do a lot. He basically discovered the neo soul sound, and he unfortunately passed away before his time. There's a Dan Charnas, who's a really talented journalist, did a biography on Dilla a couple years ago that I think is just magnificent. So anybody curious about him and his life, I would strongly urge them to look at that book.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I've been eyeballing it, but haven't had a chance to get to it. I do plan on reading it over the summer once school is out. Um, but um, oh, there she is. All right, so we have about 2 minutes left. Um, I want to thank you for not only speaking to me, but writing this wonderful book that, like I said, I'm going to start creating lessons, many lessons for my students beginning next year. But thank you. I appreciate the time, and I'm sure Euclid Public Library, we all do, for you taking the time out of your day to speak with us about this book. So can't thank you enough.
The honor was all mine. I appreciate you, Ray, and I appreciate the library.
I'll just add my thank you to both Mr. Ford there. Ray, you did a great job. And thank you, Jonathan Abrams, for writing the book. We do have copies for checkout here at the library, but we do encourage people to purchase the book as well. It's On the Come Up, An Oral History of Hip Hop. It can be found in all the bookstores. So, alrighty, well, thank you very much. Again, this is a combined Euclid Public Library and East Cleveland Library program. And with that, I'm just going to close out the program. Have a good day, everyone.